I want to welcome everyone for coming out in this weather on this very important issue. My name is Brenda Stumbo. I am the Township Supervisor. We have our Township Board members here, our Legal Counsel, William Douglas Winters, and we'll have Legislative Representative Jimmy Wilson and Jim DeSana, and they can update the public on some of the legislation that's been introduced to deal with data and all the siting location and what's going on at the state level. Then we'll have a question and answer. If everyone would write their question down, we'll have people collecting them, and we will answer the questions if we can. If we can't, then what we'll do is we'll find the answer and we'll get it posted on our website. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell could not make it, but we do have her legislative aide that is in attendance on her behalf. She is in Washington right now, and then we'll have closing comments. I do want to really thank the staff that helped put this together as well. And we were able to secure a professional videographer, and this will be uploaded to YouTube on our website tomorrow. There were people registered within the first probably 12 hours, and it filled up completely. So we're planning on scheduling a second one in order to people to attend if they would like to, but having the video is going to help a lot so people can hear the same information. Mr. Winters, are you ready to start?
First of all, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, right. I keep being reminded it's voice actuated, so I'll try and maintain the level that you can all hear me. Again, my name is Doug Winters. I am the township attorney, but my background is that of being born and raised in what we would call the Woolerand Village. It's now part of the township's golf course. I went through K through 12 at the former Woolerand School District. I was a graduate of EMU, attended Wayne State Law School. So my roots have been in Ypsi Township since 1952. I have served as the township attorney since 1984, and during that time period, I have worked for 5 different township supervisors, 6 township clerks, 3 township treasurers, and numerous trustees. While every township board from 1984 through the present creates its own identity over that 4-year period, the one common denominator that has been present in all township boards since 1984 is the township board members have been and continue to do what is in the best interests of township residents and not the politicians in Washington, D.C. and Lansing, who at times are influenced more by the lobbyists than their own constituents. So as we start this meeting this evening, and I've used this quote many times during my attorney reports, I quote the late U.S. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, whose quote is as follows, quote, "While you are entitled to your opinion, you, specifically the University of Michigan, you're not entitled to your own facts." And so tonight, the purpose of tonight's meeting, number one, is to speak truthfully, factually, and clearly as to what this township board has gone through, what this township board has done to prevent the University of Michigan, Los Alamos National Laboratory from building and constructing 2 data centers they have proposed on the corner of Bridge and the Textile Road corridor. And I want to show you for a second. Behind me is the green space, the trees. This is the area that they have chosen to locate these 2 data centers. When I say 2, I cannot tell you with any degree of certainty that it would only be 2, because in their application to the state of Michigan, where they received a $100 million gift, we'll talk about that as well, their application clearly states that their intent is to build at least 2. So keep in mind, they have 144 acres. They initially bought 20 acres in November of 2024, and then 6 months later, they've acquired the right to purchase the additional 124 acres. It's our opinion that the construction of these data centers at this location will have a devastating and negative environmental impact for generations to come. These data centers, if allowed to be built at the location behind me, right next to the banks of the Huron River, will also require the construction of at least 110 to 200 megawatt DTE substation along with the transmission lines. I am sure everyone here is very familiar with what a substation looks like, but I would encourage you to also look up the size of a 110 or 200 megawatt substation, as well as the necessary transmission lines that are needed in order to transfer the power to the substation. According to U of M's Vice President for Government Relations, Chris Kolb, these are his words. He has proudly described these data centers as being, quote, the biggest, baddest, and fastest computers in the world. And again, in order to really understand and appreciate how large this new substation will be and how much electricity will be needed to provide and power these data centers, a 110 megawatt substation, which is the lowest amount they've got on record as needing, is roughly equal to the township's entire current energy consumption. And you have to really, again, grasp what I'm saying, that this one substation, 110, could be more than that, right on its own, on its face, is equal to the entire current energy consumption of the township. The second purpose of this meeting is also to set the record straight. And by that I mean the township has been going through this efforts to get information from U of M for the last 7 to 8 months. And so you might ask yourself, why now? Why are you having this meeting tonight? Well, the answer to that question is this. On December 12th of this past winter, Christmas holiday season, we received a copy of a letter from the interim president of the university, President Grasso, wherein he advised our Congresswoman Debbie Dingell that, quote, beginning in November of 2024 and over the past year, representatives from U of M have held numerous meetings and briefings with the township supervisor, trustees, and legal counsel. That statement is 1,000% untrue. In spite of the township's repeated and numerous requests to meet with representatives of the U of M to discuss their plans to build these 2 data centers, we have only had one face-to-face meeting, and that took place on July 24th of last year. And that meeting only came about because that was the time we found out that after they had acquired the 20 acres in November of 2024, they entered into another contract for the 124 acres in June. So it took us until July 24th to schedule that face-to-face meeting. That one and only face-to-face meeting lasted about 90 minutes. The second and only meeting with those representatives, if you could call it a meeting, was a Zoom conference that lasted less than 30 minutes. And that Zoom conference, it took us longer to set up the Zoom call than the meeting itself. And during that so-called meeting, they sat there and said, "What do you want?" We said, "We would like an update." We don't have any updates. And during that meeting, they told us, right, clearly and unequivocally, that there would be no more updates coming because the university, in the words of Chris Kolb, quote, "moves slowly, so get used to it." I don't think the township, as the host community, should have to, quote, "get used to it" when you're coming into our community and you plan to build these data centers and you don't even have the courtesy to sit down and have a face-to-face discussion. I will say there was a public meeting that they did schedule. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. There was a public meeting that was scheduled not by us, but by U of M in September of 2024. That meeting was held on the North Campus of the University of Michigan. And it's probably about as inconvenient and difficult to reach that location for township residents as you can possibly find on that campus. And that meeting was more for the information for the U of M faculty, I believe, than it was for township residents. But that was not a meeting that we requested. We requested a meeting of them to come here, face the township board, township residents, and answer questions. They haven't done that yet. Now, in regards to what's gone on with these so-called data centers, you have to also keep this in mind. The University of Michigan is protected by the Michigan Constitution. They are not subject to the township's zoning laws. They are not subject to our planning review process. They are not subject to having to pay any property tax. They are not subject to a lot of the responsibilities that you as a homeowner or business owner face on a day-to-day basis. So they can buy property anywhere in the state of Michigan, be it the township, be it up north, be it anywhere, and they can go into a community and they are considered to be tax exempt and they're not subject to any type of local oversight. Now, it's against that backdrop of U of M having these rights to build these data centers at this location that we offered what we think is a viable and reasonable alternative. And for a moment, you have to at least go back in time and remember that in 2009, the General Motors Corporation filed bankruptcy. And for all of us who were born and raised in this area, many of us who worked at those plants during the summertime, many of our parents, our relatives, grandparents worked there during the bomber plant during World War II. We never thought we would see the day when General Motors would file bankruptcy. They did. So when they filed bankruptcy, this township took a 35% reduction in our state equalized value. That resulting reduction we've not yet returned to where we were in 2026. We're getting closer, but we've not yet recovered that lost revenue. So in 2009, after General Motors declared bankruptcy, the bankruptcy court took possession of all former General Motors properties. And one of those properties they took possession of was the former historic Will Run Bomber plant that was being utilized by General Motors since 1954 as a hydrometic plant. At one time, they employed 14,000 workers. And so all those properties owned by General Motors came under the control and ownership of Racer Trust. And Racer Trust was formed solely for the purpose, and actually the name Racer stands for Revitalizing Auto Communities Environmental Response. That's a very legal type of way of saying the purpose was to oversee the environmental cleanup and remediation of all the former General Motors properties so as to ensure that new development would take place on those properties with the specific goal of creating jobs and restoring the tax base to the communities that were economically damaged by the closure of those General Motor plants. So, the former General Motors plant, by the way, it consists of over 307 acres of property. So from 2011 to 2016, Racer Trust performed this environmental cleanup. They remediated the property. They removed all the contamination. They also secured what is referred to as liability protection for future owners or lessees of those properties from having any type of environmental legacy costs. So in other words, if someone comes along and wants to put their marker down and buy property over there, they're not responsible for any legacy costs from the environmental standpoint. The Racer Trust is still in existence today to make sure that any contamination that was not removed or somehow is there now is also going to be taken care of. So the state of Michigan actually purchased this property, the General Motors property, and they put in over $100 million in acquiring this property. And on this site, they actually leased this property. You may have seen this in the paper or driven by it, the American Center for Mobility. The American Center for Mobility is now on that site, and it's also involved in researching, testing on behalf of all the different car companies, the latest evolutions in terms of autonomous vehicle. But right now, they currently only use 50% of that property. So the 300 acres up here, over 150 acres is still available to be utilized. And keep in mind, when I say utilized, it is ready from an environmental standpoint to go forward. The water that serves our communities comes from Detroit. The main trunk line that goes into the Yucca and distributed to your homes comes right into that parking lot. They have the ability to have DTE build a substation there. All the infrastructure is in place to allow those two data centers to go onto that location. And so we were encouraging the University of Michigan to go over and locate those two data centers on the ACM property. Why would you destroy those acres and acres of woodlands? Why would you destroy those mature trees that have been there for hundreds of years? Why would you try and locate data centers on the banks of the Huron River? And then you also keep in mind, it's not just U of M. It's Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is part of the national defense. They're going to be there, and they're going to be doing their research on behalf of the federal government. If you do any amount of research on Los Alamos, you also see that they are viewed as being what is described as being a high-value target. And a high-value target means they are subject to any number of situations that could include bad actors, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to not go to Bridge Road, you need to go to where the state of Michigan itself said you should go. Now, this is where it gets a little bit kind of interesting. So they can go there, have their power, have the water, and ironically, Yucca has also advised U of M, this is part of the state law too, that if you have the ability to use reclaimed water, now reclaimed water is basically when you treat wastewater, it's called the effluent or reclaimed water. Because of the proximity the Yucca plant is to the former General Motors property, Yucca has advised U of M, we can provide to you the reclaimed water, which will also act to cool the computers. And if you've ever seen these data centers, it's unbelievable how large they are. With the generators, they also are built in case the power grid goes down. So you have the location, you have the mission statement, you have all the utilities there, and the utilities that you don't have, they can be built there. It can accommodate this without any problem. But they have continued to not want to go there. We've asked them to go back. We found out during the July 24th meeting that that was their first choice. Nobody told us. We were the host community, but we did not know they were talking to ACM because they operate under what they call non-disclosure agreements. And they have a non-disclosure agreement in place to where they can't even tell you they have a non-disclosure. So the whole absurdity of this is we know our community better than anybody else. We could have helped, but since you did not ask our help, we are asking and demanding that you go back and try to make this deal, but this time, let us go with you. Because we know this site, we have the environmental attorney here tonight, Grant Trigger, who participated in the oversight of the cleanup of this property and knows more about that property from an environmental standpoint than anybody in this state. So U of M continues to say, you're not welcome to sit down and be involved in these negotiations. Now, we've learned a long time ago that if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably going to find yourself on the menu. And we absolutely have a right and a purpose in being in those negotiations and discussions. They will not let us in. We have asked them over and over and over. So when you are told by someone, we looked at that site for 18 months, we could not make a deal. When you're told by them, well, we'll go with you with our environmental attorney and let's see if we can make this work, they tell you no. They won't give you any status updates in regards to what's happening. When they tell you the university moves slow, so get used to it, the only logical conclusion that anyone could come to is they're not serious about going to ACM or the Willow Run property. They have their heart and mind and soul fixated on the Bridge Road, Textile Road property, and that cannot happen. Now, adding a little bit more of an insult to injury is this fact. Unbeknownst to the township, in November of 2024, when the University of Michigan first acquired the 20-acre parcel, the following month, they went to Lansing, and there's a board you may have seen in the newspaper. It's been somewhat controversial of late. It's called the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, or MEDC. This is the board in which determines who's going to get money to invest in the state of Michigan, who's going to get money to create jobs, who's going to get money to make Michigan the place to keep our young people, attract top talent. They make that decision. The University of Michigan, and this is where it gets really kind of very, very difficult for this township board. You have to keep in mind, the University of Michigan is about the third wealthiest public university in the United States. they are sitting on a $21 billion endowment fund. They are absolutely, extremely wealthy. So unbeknownst to us, they went to the MEDC board in December, right before the holidays of 2024, and they made an application requesting of the MEDC for $100 million to build these data centers on the 20-acre parcel of Bridge and Textile Road. They didn't ask us for support. They didn't ask us what we thought of it. And in fact, as part of the application process, they are required to either get approval or support from the local unit of government, which is the township, or what they call an economic development organization, which in this case was Ann Arbor Spark. Ann Arbor Spark is an economic development organization headquartered in Ann Arbor, and some of the people on Ann Arbor Spark are also the same people that we're dealing with at the University of Michigan. So Ann Arbor Spark, not this township, wrote a letter supporting U of M's request for $100 million. Ann Arbor Spark was not elected by anyone in this room. They do not make decisions for this township board. And there's something drastically wrong when in Lansing you can have an economic development organization that can say, we support their request for $100 million and not even talk to the members of the township board or the host community. Do you think this is a good idea? It's a horrible, horrible example of corporate welfare. You have in this state right now probably 700,000 residents who are going to lose Medicaid benefits because of cuts at the federal level. You have other hundreds of thousands of people who are going to lose their SNAP benefits because of, which supplies nutritional needs because of cuts at the federal level. But yet you're going to give the wealthiest university $100 million to build these data centers on the corner of Bridge and Textile Road and not even require them to go to the same site that you have already invested $100 million in. Absolute insanity. Now, getting back to the other issue, we can have continued and continue to try and impress upon them how this could be a win-win situation. We don't want you to take away the virgin property on that corner of Textile and Bridge Road. That property, by the way, if you can see this, that is the township's South Hydro Park. This is the only access to our South Hydro Park, right off Textile Road. One side 20 acres, one side 124. So they leapfrog over the only access road the township has to South Hydro Park, which is a nature preserve park. And so now people in the township who wish to go over to the South Hydro Park are going to have to walk under transmission lines and generators, etc., to reach a park that is for the benefit of all of us. Now, ironically, U of M owns property right next to Mathi Park. If you want to put a data center so badly by a park, you could pick one by Mathi, but we all know that's not going to happen. And we know why it's not going to happen, because we've had the Ann Arbor Planning Commission go on record as saying that the city of Ann Arbor will do everything they can to prevent, in their words, any smokestacks or data centers ever coming into the city of Ann Arbor. So we don't want them in Ann Arbor. Send them to Ypsi Township. That's where they need to go. And this is yet another example, and this is why this board has really is fed up with the frustrations at this national, state, local levels, we have done everything we possibly can to make sure that they know how we feel. We provided a reasonable and justifiable alternative. And it's embarrassing, quite frankly, that the state of Michigan, even today, the governor's office will not sit down and have a conversation with us. If we could have a conversation with people in Lansing, we could show them the sites. They could drive by and look at them. And anyone who's reasonable and just is going to come to the same conclusion that those data centers belong over on the ACN property. Again, we haven't received any support from the governor's office. The people that have the influence on this decision is the governor and the MEDC. We have had a tremendous amount of support from our state representative, Jimmy Wilson Jr. And I don't know if Jimmy's here tonight yet or not. He's on his way. But he actually has introduced a bill in the State House requesting that the state of Michigan cancel and claw back that $100 million grant that was given to U of M, because again, they don't need it for number one, and number two, if you are going to grant something of that magnitude, you should have some say-so as to where those data centers are going to locate. Now, the University of Michigan, the state, from the very get-go, as we get more and more into this, it's pretty clear what's happened here. I mean, we may have been born at night, but not last night. We can read the writing on the wall. We know when things have been wired. We know when someone has greased the skids to where you can buy property in November and get a $100 million grant less than 30 days later and not even tell the local community what you're doing. That does not happen by accident. We understand the web, the connections that the University of Michigan has. We understand the intimidation they bring. This township board, myself, have been threatened that if you don't go along with this data center on Bridge and Textile Roads, you're not going to see any economic development come to the township. You're not going to see any tax dollars come over here for our future projects. But the township has always tried to stand tall and do what is right. Some of you may remember, I may be dating myself, guess I am, but in 1987, there was a pretty popular movie at that time called Wall Street. And Michael Douglas portrayed the character in the movie, the character known as Gordon Gekko. And Gordon Gekko is the one who famously delivered this quote: "Ladies and gentlemen, greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed, in all of its forms, has marked the upward surge of mankind," unquote. That is exactly what has happened here with these data centers. That's what exactly is happening with DTE. You have already seen what's happened in Saline Township. They had no more got approval to put that data center in Saline Township, where they had special meetings, and they absolutely rushed through the approval on an ex parte basis to build this 1-point-something trillion, jillion, gigawatt that would be the equivalent of serving 1 million homes. They did that in 30 days. Because why? Because the Public Service Commission is not there to serve the public. It's there to serve the interests of DTE. And doing further research on that situation, on the same date that the Public Service Commission approved DTE's request to expedite and fast-track approval of their request to go forward to start building the substation out there, they were asked by the Public Service Commission, do you guarantee that you will be responsible for all costs of power that's not purchased by the data center? They did not agree to do that, and the Public Service Commission has given them 30 days to decide whether or not they will accept that condition. That just shows you again, even when they get their way, they still won't commit. And this DTE that we have met with on two occasions to get a better understanding, their only focus is on the Bridge Road, Textile Road properties. They've tried to convince our full-time officials that if you allow us to build this 110 megawatt substation, that your power bills will actually go down. And in fact, you, Supervisor Stumbo, you have a responsibility to go out and tell your residents that their rates are going to go down. Now, again, none of us are drinking that Kool-Aid up here. None of us know that to be the case. We've all seen our power bills go up right now, even without the data center. Detroit News just did a publication showing that the DT power rates have gone up, doubled, to the point where we're like the highest in the country except for 3 states. And you can probably guess 2 of them, California and New York. So we're at the top of the pyramid right now in terms of our rate structure. But again, they are going to continue to try and steamroll, push over. They're going to continue to try and tell you, well, we're still looking at both sites. They're not. If they were, they would let us participate. They would let us participate. Somebody once said, well, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring your folding chair. Well, we would. We just don't know when or where they meet because they won't tell us anything. And again, by being the host community, it's hard to put into words when you've been the attorney since 1984 with all these different boards, this current board member, it's hard to accept when as a host community, and we're getting questions from residents, what's going on, that we can't even give a straight answer because we don't know. They won't let us in the room. Well, I will also say right now that we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop. The U of M's employees from the very beginning who came to our meetings, they told us not to trust U of M. They were right. We had a number of residents and activists who attended our meetings who also told us that data centers at that location would not be good for the environment, would create a tremendous surge in water, sewer, electricity, destroy the habitat. They were right. We understand right now that we have a choice of either fighting back, being a willing victim or unwilling victim. We choose not to be a willing victim. But the one thing that U of M has accomplished during the last 7-8 months is that they have united this township board, and I believe they've galvanized the Ypsilanti Township community, and that they right now have brought together persons of every political persuasion to fight against these efforts to locate these data centers along the Huron River. I do believe that we can still turn this around, but we need your help. We need your help. We need you to support the township board in our efforts to get a meeting with the governor's office, our state elected officials. Our Congresswoman Debbie Dingell has been asking for full transparency. She hasn't received the answers to the questions either. Senator Slocum, to relocate these data centers onto the industrial property that was acquired by the state of Michigan, that was remediated of all contamination so as to encourage this type of technology to locate there. We recognize the U of M has deep financial pockets and the bandwidth of connections and influence that they have. But what they do not have, and what we believe we do, are the people. This is not about being on the right or being on the left from a political standpoint, but simply stated, it's about being right or wrong. The Bridge Road, Tax Road location is wrong. It is wrong that this state allows this university to be exempt from paying police and fire taxes. You saw last week what can happen when a person that might be having some emotional issues decides that he doesn't want to come out of a house. You saw the amount of resources that have to be deployed in response to that situation. Keep in mind, no one is making this up when we say Los Alamos is a high-value target. University of Michigan is a target. And for us to believe that somehow our police and our fire are not going to be involved in responding to those two data centers is simply naive and misguided. We will have to respond. We have a legal obligation to respond. The sheriff is here tonight. The fire chief is here tonight. They can tell you when they get calls in distress for help, for fire, for any type of violent situation, hostage, a rogue employee, they are going to respond. It's wrong for the U of M to receive $100 million when they're the wealthiest university, third in the whole country, while hundreds of thousands of Michigan residents are being denied Medicaid and SNAP benefits. It's simply wrong to give them, reward them with a welfare check. So right now, it's easy to say you can give up because you don't have the legal right to take them to court, but we still believe that you contain within yourself a tremendous amount of power and influence. And I can tell right now that the phone calls we've received, this room would have been packed tonight but for the weather. There's no question about that. And we have another 250, 300 people that are on a wait list who will be here at a second meeting. During this interim time period, all of you can help by reaching out to the people I mentioned and encourage them to make sure that this gross facility is never located on the banks of the Huron River in one of the most environmentally sensitive wooded areas in this township. So what I would like to do, before I do my closing type argument or closing request to address to the Board of Regents, is also just mention this in case I haven't right now. The reason why you cannot zone out data centers, that is what they refer to as exclusionary zoning. If you could zone out data centers, every township and city in this state would have already done so. So it's not because the township would not like to do that, we just cannot legally do that. So because of the last 7.5 months, we've gotten nowhere, literally nowhere, with the vice presidents that they've sent to us to try and convince us to abandon our zeal to have these data centers located on industrial property. Because we've gotten nowhere with them, this last portion of what I'm going to at least articulate is basically almost like an open letter, and it's going to be addressed to the University Board of Regents. And so this is what I would say to them if they were sitting in this room this evening. So as I close this portion of my presentation, I am reminded of the novel that was published by Charles Dickens in 1859 entitled A Tale of Two Cities. Dickens opens the novel with this sentence: "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was a season of light, it was a season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair." Board of Regents, this township is truly at a crossroads with your board and the University of Michigan. However, this crossroads does not have to turn into a siege or blockade. There is a path that can be taken at this crossroad that could lead to success to all parties. To move forward, we are asking the Board of Regents at U of M, who also are elected by the people of our state, to take the time and show that you care about our community, our residents, your constituents. This issue is of utmost importance to us and will shape the township's future for generations to come. We truly need to help you understand this. Your proposed site to locate the U of M and Los Alamos data centers, along with a 110 to 200 megawatt electrical substation, along with the required switchgear along bridge and textile roads near the banks of the scenic Huron River, adjacent to both our hydro dam and Ford Lake, is, simply stated, not the proper location. If you would take the time to physically visit the two sites in Ypsilanti Township, we believe it would help you understand why the industrial area that was purchased by the state of Michigan for this very purpose, where the contamination has been remediated by the Racer Trust, and where the American Center for Mobility is currently located, is clearly the most preferred and logical site for these data centers. A drive along the Huron River and Ford Lake within the township will help us share the best of Ypsilanti Township with you. If it was warmer, we could take you for a canoe or boat ride down the Huron River and Ford Lake, and you could see what we see and what we want to protect. Our part of the Huron River and Ford Lake is a source of pride and is a jewel in our community. It provides recreational, health, and economic benefits for our residents. There are 10 parks located along the Huron River and Ford Lake in the township. 2 of those parks are adjacent to the proposed U of M and Los Alamos data centers, along with the proposed DTE substation and switchgear that will be necessary to transfer the electricity to those data centers. Our residents in the state of Michigan have invested millions of dollars in developing and supporting our parks. Ypsilanti Township residents have spent millions over the years on maintaining and protecting our dam, which serves as an alternate energy source that provides electricity. We fully recognize that our people, our places, and our cultures are not built on a foundation of wealth and power, but on hard work, resolve, and a promise to help others and to provide a better life for our families. We acknowledge that we are different than most of Washtenaw County. We recognize we have limited resources, lower incomes, almost no generational wealth, and that we are home to the largest populations of brown and black families within our county. In societal class ratings, I guess you refer to our community as being the middle class, the working class. We have historically and continue to face the impact of classism, racism, and because of all these personal prejudices systemic policies, and societal norms, and discrimination that has been imposed at times upon our township because we are located east of Carpenter Road, the unofficial dividing line between us and Ann Arbor. Our residents have always had to, quote, stand up to be seen and to be heard. With the hard work and strength and examples of leadership by our founding residents, who were the greatest generation. Many of you, no doubt, come from a background where your parents and grandparents would be the greatest generation. I know that I do, and many of our board members do. We have learned how to seek our rightful place to protect our family and to build our community. It was here in this township that this greatest generation, our ones who gave us a chance to become successful, it was here where we built the B-24 bombers at the Will Run Bomber Plant that brought Hitler, the Nazis, and World War II to an end. Our residents migrated from the South and around the world to work at the bomber plant and the auto plants following the war. They left their families, everything they knew, to build a better life. Many of our residents are struggling today, trying to make ends meet, feed their families, and provide a safe place to live. We need you, Board of Regents, to help us protect our people and our environment, to be a part of lifting our community up. Board of Regents, you can help us. You can help our community. And you can help your constituents by locating the U of M and Los Alamos data centers in an industrial area in the township owned by the state of Michigan and leased to the Will Run American Center for Mobility. We know this site will work. It was home to the General Motors Hydromatic Powertrain Factory, and its physical proximity to ICUA will allow both data centers to use the reclaimed water from Yucca, which will help with both the sustainability of the data centers and have a positive environmental impact. This is an opportunity, Board of Regents, to take a leadership role while also showing our residents that you truly care. Some of our most vulnerable residents live directly across the street from these two proposed data centers. Ask yourself this question. Would you want to live and raise your family across the street from these two data centers? Look out and see this gigantic DTE substation along with the switchgear. Our residents and your constituents deserve better. Ypsilanti Township, we have a legacy of standing up and fighting for our community and each other. We fought the most powerful and wealthiest lobby in Michigan at one time, the manufactured home lobbyists, along with a large politically connected developer who wanted to destroy our land and our tax base. We took that fight all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court. The township prevailed. This township also joined in the legal fight to stop the world's largest toxic waste incinerator and injection wells from being built right near the Lincoln School campus. That fight took years of our lives, time from families, and was expensive, but with others, our people won that fight to protect our land, air, and water against the enemies that sometimes of wealth and power. We will stand up and fight if we have to. We will protect the People's River, the Huron River. We will protect our environment. We'll fight to protect our businesses and homes that are threatened by U of M and the Los Alamos data centers. As a community, Ypsilanti Township will do everything possible to stop the building of these data centers, power station, and switchgear at the Textile Bridge Road location. Just in closing, last statement, the Board of Regents, quote, just do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winters. Excellent job. We now have State Representative Jim DeSana has made it here. State Representative Jimmy Wilson is still on the road trying to get here. He is close, according to Treasurer Eldridge. So can you give us an update on the state, some of the state legislation and what you're doing in Lansing?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me. Sure, thank you for having me tonight. Well, needless to say, I voted no on the tax breaks for the data centers, and the flood of data centers came in almost immediately after we passed the sales tax and use tax breaks that they've gotten. We have a repeal. We have a bill to repeal the tax breaks. That's an uphill climb because it's harder to repeal something once it's been passed because it's been signed by our governor. But I along with Representative Dylan Wegela, have introduced two bills to repeal the sales and use tax breaks, which make it very attractive and very lucrative for these data centers. Hyperscale data centers are out of whack on the cost-benefit analysis. If you look at them, there's almost no benefit. They don't employ people. They take up huge amounts of property, and they drain large amounts of energy from your grid. And I guess I just would address this, even though some of this is federal and some of this is state, that our grid is very vulnerable, and you all know this. And most people don't even realize how vulnerable our grid is. And they take up very large amounts of energy. That's why it's a great deal for DTE, Consumers Power. They were the ones pushing this. The benefit is not to your residents. They use a tremendous amount of water. They have to treat the water with glycol, so they're polluting the water that they have internally, so they have to discharge this into a sewage system that then would have to clean the glycol out of the water. It's an anti-corrosive. They have to have some anti-corrosives in the pipes. A lot of the places, and I'm not sure about your particular interest proposal, a lot of the places will tell you that they are a closed loop. It's a misnomer. They're always going to put water out. There's no real, it's not a total closed loop. They don't treat their water and put clean water back into the river or into the stream or I imagine this water would go into the sewage treatment plant. Up to 70 decibels of noise. Now they will tell you that they can control the noise. That would be disingenuous. These generators, these backup generators are loud. They're not running 24/7, but the HVAC equipment that's on them also are running near constantly. So they are very loud. So anybody who lives within a mile of the data center is going to have a dull hum in 24 hours a day. And I don't know if you follow a lot of the intricacies of noise and frequencies with people and problems with sleep and problems with noise. It can affect people's health. Now, I believe that there will be some heightened level of microwave radiation coming from these data centers. We really haven't run a lot of tests on that as you look at other states, and other states are talking about increased incidences of cancer around data centers. Indiana and Ohio have some of these now. So noise, water, energy, I just don't think that, I think the risk to our grid and the risk to your power for your homes is great. If we lose power, they have backup generators, but if we lose power, and we lose power quite a bit. I'm from Carlton, just a little bit east of here in northern Monroe County, and we lose power about 4 to 5 times a year. Also, I'd like to point out to you, this will just give you an idea as to scale. It takes about 44 square miles of solar panels to power a data center, a hyperscale data center. 28,000 acres of solar panels. Now, people will say, well, they can use a gas-powered power plant if they can sequester the carbon. So that'll be the next thing that you'll hear is they're going to sequester carbon, maybe in Lenawee County. Who knows? They're trying to find spots to shoot liquid carbon into the ground to be able to power these data centers with enough power that they need, which is tremendous. I think they say one hyperscale data center is about the same amount of power as 1 million homes. And that's give or take. And this is a conservative estimate here. It is, that 28,000 acres is conservatively estimated, so you don't have 28,000 acres to give for solar panels, but expect that there would be some need for that level of energy to power this. And, you know, there's a lot of information out there that people don't see lower electric rates, they see higher electricity rates. And I know that many of you will say, my electric bill is already high enough. We do need more competition in the energy industry. People are getting stuck in a monopoly. We've got a problem with monopoly and people not getting efficient power to their house. From a state level, we would like to be able to place additional regulation upon these hyperscale data centers. We tend to rest on local control, like you would have the control, but unfortunately, a lot of the local control has been hampered or taken away or even threatened with a lawsuit. And I was talking to Trustee Eldridge earlier about some of the details of your particular data center. And so your zoning is your zoning already industrial for the site. It is already zoned industrial. How close are you to a residential?
100, yeah, right across the street. So 60 foot.
So the law, yeah, okay. The law doesn't really address proximity to residences. And I think that that's where we've really failed as a state legislature to that there should be a buffer zone. And not just a small buffer zone, and there should be trees planted around the data center to mitigate some of the noise. And there should be an environmental impact study. All of you should ask, why would they not do an environmental impact study? It's by law, they're supposed to. Doesn't matter if you're a nonprofit, you're supposed to do an environmental impact study. So what animals are on this property, what other things that would be impacted. And we know even 120 acres of buildings and cement are going to alter the drainage of the area significantly. You're going to have a big change in the whole dynamic of how water drains, because these are big buildings, basically big, huge pole barns, essentially. Oh, and here's the other thing I want to leave you with. I think that the local governments and our state government should have the ability to require end-of-life mandates. In other words, when these buildings are no longer useful, and at some point they won't be useful. The technology is changing so fast. Who's going to clean up the site? Because it will be contaminated. And unfortunately, as we know in Michigan, it's not the companies that clean up the site. And it certainly won't be the University of Michigan, because they will come to the state and say, we've got a contaminated site that we no longer need. It's abandoned. And it's going to have to be cleaned up, but it's going to take us a while to find the money to clean it up. And then somebody's going to come and say, well, we've got this vacant property in our township now, and we can't be used because it's contaminated, and we don't have the money to clean it up because all these buildings have to be torn down, and inside the buildings you've got contamination because you've got chemicals, you've got electronics. And I will say this, we've been storing data since the 1980s, been storing data on a large scale since the 90s. These can go into brownfields. They can go into places where they don't have as much of an impact on residences, and they're just going for the cheapest, easiest place to put them. I think that we really need to rethink as a state, and I hope that your local community will really rethink this as to any cooperation that you would give or any fight that you would put up to stop this based on all of the factors that I have mentioned to you that I'm sure you're probably all aware of. And we are on your side. I can tell you there's a very large group of us as legislators that are on your side trying to find ways to regulate these and cause them to go other places. that are less impactful to residences. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to tell you tonight. Thank you.
Mr. DeSanta, ours is the University of Michigan and Los Alamos. Could you talk a little bit about how the state constitution allows them to come in without zoning approval from your local government, county? They are exempt from taxes. They are exempt from many things. And is there a possibility or opportunity to change that? I know it's a state constitution, or to somehow put in the process.
Yeah, one of the unanticipated, unintended consequences of allowing universities to have tax exempt status, nonprofit status, and for them to be able to buy property is that they can do things like this, buy property without any regulation from the community. And honestly, it's pretty offensive to me that a university would come in, buy property, and force something like this upon you where you don't want it. That if the residents didn't want it, they would say, listen, we'll find another place. This is not the place for this. So could it be changed? It could. What I would encourage you all, I mean, Jimmy and I are on the same page on this. I would encourage you all to contact the legislators and say you don't want these hyperscale data centers in residential areas. You want them to have to put buffer zones in, to put trees in, to have the environmental impact study that they're supposed to do by law. Why do they get away with, they're not exempt from the environmental impact study. As far as the tax goes and your ability to regulate a university, they have statutory, or they have constitutional authority because they're in our state constitution. They have a board, they're chartered in the Michigan Constitution. But we certainly need to look at this because to me, this is a violation of a community's trust that we place in our institutions, that they should just have the ability to buy property, come into your town and put a hyperscale data center with all these negative impacts without any input from your community or you being able to regulate them in any way. That's just unfair to me. And I look at the Saline situation, and Saline's land was not zoned industrial, it was zoned agricultural. And they didn't have to rezone their property to heavy or to industrial, but they did out of fear of a lawsuit. And it's really wrong that that communities should have to be subject to that they would have to worry to have to expend all these resources to sue, to fight. So I just want to let you know you have legislators on your side to try to fight this fight. It was a very close in the state legislature about giving these tax breaks. And we know as legislators that these are not the types of facilities that people want in residential areas. And I back you on that. And I just spoke in Mason, Michigan, even in an agricultural area, to chew up 1,000 acres of farmland. We're not for that. If it were to go in a brownfield and be able to be buffered from residential areas, I don't know that it would be as bad as what these are. So Jimmy can speak to some of that, I think.
Thank you. State Representative Jimmy Wilson has made it through the bad storm, right, from East Lansing. So, Jimmy.
Drive faster.
Yeah. Well, you had your truck. I had my Mach-E today. Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Wilson, State Representative here in the Ypsi Township, Ypsi City, Superior, Pittsfield Township, House District 32. I just want to say I'm thankful for Rep. DeSanta, because we actually have worked together on a couple other pieces of legislation as well. One is about some DTE stuff too, but we won't go too deep into that tonight. But one of the bills that I just recently introduced right before Christmas is clawing back the $100 million that the state authorized for U of M. And it was actually bipartisan. We had folks on both sides of the aisle that understood, especially now in hindsight, $100 million, what could we be doing with that not for the data center. We could be using that for housing and food and medical, healthcare, all kinds of different things. We have a plethora of things we could use it for. My bill actually just sends those dollars back to the general fund, so it doesn't actually try to spend it at all. And that's really where I got even more bipartisan support, because right now, when we're talking about the budget and the appropriations process, we need every dollar we can get to make sure we're getting out the services that you all want. And so I talked to the appropriations chair committee chair today, Ann Boland. She said that right now things are on pause in regards to clawbacks, just because of some other lawsuits that are going on with some other clawbacks that have occurred. However, she did say that she wants to get me a hearing. As soon as the appropriate season really kicks off, February, March. And so I think that we'll be able to bring out some of our township officials, and hopefully some folks here, residents, and so I'll keep you all posted on that. I think it really can move, because I think we have folks on both sides of the aisle that can see that this probably shouldn't have been done in the first place. And I'll just be fully transparent that in the beginning, a year ago, I did support the original project they presented. The problem is what they presented to the Appropriations Committee is not what appears today. Before, it was this, here's a supercomputer, it's going to be on 20 acres. This is going to be revolutionary for AI research. They didn't say that how much water is used and how much energy. They didn't say that, oh, we also need another 100 acres on top of that. And also we're going to throw this substation on the corner of Bridge Road and Textile, and just all kinds of things that have occurred up until this point in time that myself and other township officials have learned over this last year. And so at this point, I can't support that. Right now, we have another property, public property, American Center for Mobility. It is zoned properly, and it also has the capacity. The Yuck has already talked about them. I'm quite sure they're here probably, but that is a more proper use of the property of this type of project, if the project is to proceed. And so the American Center for Mobility makes more sense, and I've been working with Michigan Economic Development Corporation to see how we can broker that. But right now that is kind of stalled as well. But I know our township officials are steadfast on trying to make something happen here to where we can get some movement, and also make sure that they're hearing the concerns of residents here in township. That's why you're all here today. So that's just my update on the bill to claw back those $100 million. So I'll keep you all posted over the next 60 days or so on where that is at. I can tell you that there has been no contract signed by the University of Michigan and the state of Michigan. Right now, it's just all things on paper, ideas, but no signatures are in place. And so that's actually helpful, because if there was a contract in place, it would be harder to claw back these dollars. So because they're dragging their feet and not being transparent, they have an unintended consequence on their end now, to where we could actually claw these dollars back. So I think that's it for that. Go ahead, Jim.
Just to add to Jimmy's point, one of the problems and one of the things Jimmy and I have been working on is a project that would stop utility companies from being able to make donations to politicians. They have a tremendous amount of influence, a tremendous amount of power, and a tremendous amount of money. And I have not taken any. And so the problem when these tax breaks passed, they were having a very difficult time getting these sales and use tax, the bill that would give the breaks, and then the utility companies weighed in and they got their votes, and next thing you know, the flood of data centers started coming in. I believe it's above 50 now in the state of Michigan. It's over 50. People talk about 25, 26. They're calling everywhere. They're checking all kinds of places. They're signing options on property. I expect it'll probably get over 50 real quick here, because there's some places that they choose not to go because they meet a little bit of resistance, and then next thing you know, you hear that another township has gotten a request for proposal. I think Eagle Township, just to give you an example, the hyperscale data center there was going to take about a quarter of their township. 1/4. That changes the whole dynamic of your township. Even 120 acres is a monstrosity. And I think that you have a very good alternative proposal for them, which they should take, honestly. Thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to take the questions and give answers. We have 2 people collecting them.
Actually, most of these questions were answered.
If the questions were answered, we were trying to answer to provide enough information in advance, but if there's other questions that you have, just submit the card, and then we will ask the question, and whoever up here can answer it from the state level, the local level, and our attorney. Can we start with the first question, Belinda?
Sure. All right, the first question I have is, if overhead power lines will be used, how large will they be, and what route will they follow?
So that is a DTE question, and we do not have a plan submitted yet. We don't know, when we met with DTE, they talked about there's a high tension line going down Bridge Road. It would have to go over to the 20 acres originally purchased, and they would have what's called a switch yard and a very large substation before they deliver it, the power to, so the whole 20 acres, we've learned, will be a switch yard, which is a way of taking electricity from a high-tension wire and delivering it to a substation, which then takes, the substation takes it to the user of the property. We don't know what size. Is it 100 megawatt, 200? We don't know. We just don't have any information. As soon as we get it, we'll post it on our website, but right now, they are not telling us anything, including DTE.
Brenda, based on what Doug said and what you guys have found out, that it's going to be minimum 100 megawatt to 200, and you can actually research or Google, and you can see pictures, 2 things, electrical substations, you can see that for 100 or 200, and then you can also do the switch gear. It's a monster.
We had a picture, and we were going to include it, but I didn't want to mislead anyone because we don't know how big it is. Their application was from 100 to 200 megawatts. But they're, like Trustee Rose said, you can look it up and see it. It is a large industrial-looking, electrical, ugly, horrible site. So just look up switchgear and substations for 100 megawatt to 200 megawatt, and it'll give you an idea.
And did you just say that the 20-acre site is going to be strictly the substation and the electrical component of this?
That is what we were told at a meeting with the University of Michigan.
Okay, and this question, is it possible to stop U of M from building the data center at all, or is the best option to convince them to move it from textile? And then the second part of that question is, can it be stopped completely, or will it be built on no matter what? And is it just a question of where?
Mr. Winters, would you like to take that?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning right now, and I think it was also echoed by the state reps at Desana and Wilson, the University of Michigan is a political subdivision, a political municipality for all practical purposes. They're exempt from zoning, they're exempt from local oversight from a land use standpoint, they're exempt from paying taxes. So they can ignore our zoning and proceed towards the Bridge Road textile road location. That's why we work so hard to provide them an alternative. And so I would not ever mislead anyone into believing that from a legal standpoint, I can just simply say stop and therefore they will retreat. I do believe, though, that the pressure that they would receive, not only in Lansing, but also to the border regions, to again follow what we talked about this evening right now, that there is an alternative. And that's why I think before the state reps arrived, we were so upset as a board, because the MEDC had an opportunity to tie bar that $100 million grant to U of M going to the ACM location. But right now, the pressure has to be brought to bear by the state, by the governor's office, to do the right thing and go where they have the water, the energy, the electricity. They're going to build a substation anyways, so it can be built on that site at the ACM property. And I think right now, that's the most logical, the most rational way to look at this. They need to not build on the banks of the Huron River for all the reasons we've discussed tonight, and go to where the state of Michigan said they should go back when they spent $100 million and created and cleaned up that General Motors property. The brownfield is exactly where they should go, because they're not going to have the negative impact, especially when they're both are considered to be high value targets.
Okay, the next question, there's actually three parts to it. Who was the previous owner of the property? Why did they choose this location? And will this be a strategic target of our enemies during wartime?
Mr. Winter?
So who was the owner, original owner?
The owner of the 124 acres is Norfolk Western Railway. They're the ones who own the 124. The 20 acre was a private party. I believe that, again, everything I've read, especially in regards to Los Alamos, they have been reviewed, they have been considered for some time as being a high value target. They're currently, I think, located mostly in New Mexico. But it would be naive for us to believe that the number of bad actors that we have right now in the world, that they would not still be considered that high value target if they locate along the banks of the Huron River right near our hydro station. It's just, it's not logical. They'd have more security if they were locating over there on the brownfield site.
In regards to your question about national security, it's very plain and simple that this is not just about data storage. We have, our data is stored right now. This is about AI. It's about a lot about your jobs. If you do the research, I won't go deep into it tonight. And certainly when these data centers are controlling autonomous vehicles, drones, things that would need to operate through AI, they certainly would be an elevated target for an enemy, whether it would be to take out an area. Obviously, there's a lot of energy here too, as you see. So they're going to be very, very important to the functioning aspect of a society, of a community. The military has their data and their ability. They're underground, as you all know. They're not soft targets like a big building out in the middle of nowhere, or here. So I'm concerned about the national security implications. I'm concerned about the potential for, if you took one of these out, what would it do if your jobs were depending upon it, or if aviation or autonomous vehicles that are driving around that are going to be dependent upon this AI. They're telling us that there's going to be autonomous vehicles very soon. They're already here, honestly. And I think they're going to be delivering packages to your house via drones. They're talking about that too. So it's a scary new world we live in.
Next question, Mark.
All right. While the American Center for Mobility is a better location, what would be the environmental impact of that location? How close to residential zones is it? And what power do environmental impact studies have in stopping construction?
I don't know the exact distance.
Actually, I think Grant Trigger, he's here, and right, I think Grant, the question was, what environmental impact would there be if there was a data center built on the ACM property? And Grant is the gentleman who worked for Racer Trust for 14 years, who personally and legally oversaw the cleanup of that site. So Grant, if you could elaborate, that'd be great.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, I am Grant Trigger. I was the Racer Environmental Cleanup Manager for 14 years. So I handled all the work on the site that prepared it for ACM and participated in coordinating the development of ACM on the site. So I know the site pretty well. I want to be clear on the question, though. Was the question if the computing center was moved to the American Center Mobility site, would the computing center cause an environmental issue on the ACM site? Or was it the other way around? I'm sorry?
What would the environmental impact be on the ACM site if it were moved there instead of your?
I don't think there would be any significant environmental impact from the computer center if it was moved to the ACM site that's any different than what's already there. When the trust was formed out of the GM bankruptcy, it had two missions: manage and sell the old property that GM abandoned in bankruptcy, and address any of the environmental issues on the site. The trust has a 100-year budget on this site, and the trust is still responsible for the existing environmental contamination conditions. So consider this: the site's covered with an 80-acre concrete slab. Most of what ACM built went on top of that slab. So if a computing center comes there and they build it on or next to the slab, you're building another building on top of a concrete slab that covers the contamination that's already there. In addition, whether the facility is at ACM or the Ridge Road location, they would be responsible for any contamination they caused. So to Doug's point and to the Township Board's point, we have a better place. Representative DeSanta pointed, there's a better place. Put it in the better place and have them be responsible for their costs, then it's better for the community to put it on an existing brownfield site. We've had several conversations with a number of people. We've asked, well, why at one time they were considering putting this facility at ACM, then they switched to Ridge Road. Well, why? Despite multiple requests, they have never at any time said to us, this is why we don't want to go to ACM site, except one thing. They want to buy property. ACM said they wanted to lease it. That's a pretty easy problem to solve in my estimation. So I think that's probably the best I can offer at the time, Doug, as to the basic issues of the two locations.
Next question.
Okay, the next question is, how can we support the legislation to get DTE out of politics?
Since Rep. DeSanta is the lead on that, I'll let him answer the.
You can sign the petition, take back our power, mop up Michigan, and put it to the voters for a question as to whether a utility monopoly or a corporation doing business with the state of Michigan should be able to make donations to elected officials. I think we believe that it's over 60, 70% of the people believe that you should determine what your politicians, what your elected officials decide, not a large utility monopoly. It's a big problem.
Next question.
This is a comment from a resident. I would like to inform the public that there is a group of citizens, Michiganders for money out of politics, who would like to pass a law to stop regulated utilities such as DTE from giving to campaigns of those elected officials who would be regulating the utilities. Visit us at the Ypsilanti District Library on Tuesday, January 20th from 5:30 to 7:30, mopupmichigan.org, to go on the coattails of what we just talked about.
Next comment or question?
All right, this kind of goes with the same theme. Can you provide a petition or letter for us to sign as a township to send to legislators in Lansing?
And can I add on that? I have a very similar question in that vein. Who should residents contact to express support in moving forward House Bill 5362, which is the 100 million clawback bill? Are there legislators on the fence that can be moved, is the question.
Yes, the clawback. I would say you can contact the Appropriations Committee Chair. She takes calls from all around the state because she's the Approps Chair. But also if you have family, friends, or other folks in just around the state, to make sure that their representatives and senators are on board with it also, that would be very helpful. Ann Bolin is the chair of Appropriations Committee, very responsive.
We can put that on our website for people to have access to all the information that we have here.
And I'm on the Appropriations Committee as well.
All right, if the data center is located at ACM, will there still be expected increase in cost and instability in DTE service?
Based on the information I know, yes. It's not going to change the fact of how much power this facility is going to draw from your current electrical capacity. We are I can't stress it enough, we are very vulnerable. With the green energy law that we have, we don't have enough capacity in Michigan. And it's very difficult to put new power plants online. It's off in the future, but in the near term, we could be having problems similar to what they have in California, where we have brownouts.
Next question.
Suppose they use ACM site, what neighbors are affected and what will be done to mitigate impact of those neighbors?
The site is up here, and it's the former General Motors site. Across the street is the Hydromatic or BOC plant, it's another plant that's located across the street. Directly behind it is a Willow Run Airport. So it's already in a heavy industrialized zoning district. The American Center for I'm sorry.
West Willow neighborhood.
The neighborhood is 2 lanes, then middle large space, and 2 more lanes. So I don't know the exact distance it is from it, but it's not close to houses like it is on Bridge Road. Bridge Road, you can throw a rock from where it's at and hit the residential. Next question.
The next question is regarding house values. Will they tank? Will taxes go up regardless of the value?
This is another really large concern I have. I don't believe that you will get 100% of your value once someone knows that they're less than 100 yards from a hyperscale data center, based on all the negatives, the decibel, the noise. And once they know that once this is out in the public, you have to disclose that if you're selling your house. So the impact to the residents on that regard is a big concern of mine, and why any entity would be able to come in and do this without taking all that into account. I don't know why our state allows that.
Next question.
This was discussed before, but with Los Alamos using 90% for classified nuclear warfare research, knowing it's a target for terrorism and that it would make IPSI synonymous with nuclear war, why even encourage it at ACM? Why not try to keep it out entirely?
I think Mr. Winters addressed that.
Well, again, right now, they are partnering with University of Michigan. They're both, are tax exempt entities. They do not have to follow our zoning laws. And so right now, it's not a question of are we encouraging it? We're trying to at least direct the location where it should go. Because if we don't do that, and they simply wind up on the banks of the Huron River, that is the absolute worst place in the world they could locate. So with the power that the state constitution has given the University of Michigan, it's very difficult to do anything except trying to, again, bring the public awareness to a level where they too can influence the Board of Regents, the governor's office, MBDC, our elected officials, to encourage them to do the right thing and go to where they'll have the least impact upon the township. And that would be the ACM property or the former General Motors property.
What data or statistics do we have to see the health data on communities who have data centers? Is there any increase or prevalence in cancer rates by age demographics, and what are the plans to share this?
Based on some of the research that's out there, there's a few studies out there, mainly have to do with the water, when you're drawing water out of the aquifer, which I believe this site would be using city water, right? However, going beyond that with a microwave radiation, that's really an unanswered question right now. We don't know. We just don't know enough. We don't have enough of these. We haven't had them long enough to know what are the health effects. There have been some fairly disturbing studies about people who live within a mile of a data center and increased cancer rates. Now, that's all I can say is we just don't have enough information, but those are real, that's real data. You can research it. I have a few articles on my phone about it. But mainly the one in Indiana, or the one that they mentioned, was because they draw so much water out of the aquifer, out of your wells, that people lose their well water, and then the nitrates concentrate because they're also putting polluted water back in. They're not putting clean water back in. And one of the things I noticed that might be their reason to want to be here versus there is at some point, they may not be saying it up front, at some point they might want to discharge water into the river. That's my guess. And and if I go just one step further, if you contaminate a new site next to a river, I don't think that's the greatest idea in the world.
Next question.
Does anybody know who in the township, county, or state has signed NDAs regarding this particular project?
So none of us have signed NDAs. And we actually wanted to, I think Jimmy, you supported this too, right? That a law that would say that elected officials cannot sign NDAs. By our very nature, we're supposed to be able to respond to you. You elected us. We're supposed to be able to respond to you as to what's going on. And then you say, I can't tell you that because I've signed a non-disclosure agreement with a company. And they're like, wait a second. You work for me, not for them. So it's ludicrous on its face. So I know that this is another big problem. And this is a bill that we had in front of us, and it didn't quite get through. That's another thing to tell your legislators. Sign the bill, vote for the bill that says an elected official cannot sign an NDA. And if that becomes state law, that would apply to township officials, county officials.
What about University of Michigan?
The Board of Regents couldn't sign NDAs.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's House Bill 5399, sponsored by our next door neighbor, Representative Reggie Miller over in Van Buren Township, where she's dealing with, I think, 3 of them right now that could be coming to Van Buren Township, actually, which is right next door to us.
And again, we'll put that up on the website so everyone has this information from our state representatives. Next question.
This is more of a comment. University of Michigan people at the September info meeting could not answer questions about water use, unaware of DTE issues. This person sent questions to Yucca, who had limited info at the time. One of the talking heads at the September meeting was shocked when I described North and South Hydro Park. They really had no idea. She mentioned the Eagles for extra oomph, and I asked them to come see the limited, I apologize, I can't see this word, but come kayak with me, so that was the comment.
You have bald eagles on the property?
Yeah.
Yes. Next.
I don't think the University of Michigan is exempt from the Endangered Species Act. I believe that they have to abide. That's why you need to insist that they do an environmental impact study, and that takes time. And they're going to come on this property and find out what species are on it, what birds are above it, who's eating out of the river. And I think that that would be actually probably your best route to go would be to say there's eagles flying over this property and eating in the river, and that's not even being addressed here. Great point.
Next.
How will the construction, presence, and constant vibration of the data center affect the terrain of the dam, the river, and the lake? And will this cause risk for flooding?
We just don't know enough about these data centers to know how the sound affects animals and humans that live around them, and how vibration from the HVAC and the generators affect wildlife, human life, and even the water, the river. I would assume it's going to be pretty close to the river. And
Well, I mean, if you've seen the videos of the massive amount of trucking that's going on with the Saline Township, I couldn't imagine, I mean, if it's the same type of activity here, just building of it, the dust and the truck traffic, and then once everything is up and running, the noise is absolutely going to affect the aquatic life, the animal life, the human life.
And if I could also just add to that question, we do have a hydro safety manager oversees our dam. It is a license by FERC, and that question has come up in regards to the potential impact. I think as the state representative DeSana and Wilson have also indicated that this environmental impact study is going to be probably very, very detailed and inclusive, and obviously the impact of that vibration on the dam is one that we have discussed. We just don't know exactly enough about what their plans are, but it is on our radar as to something that needs to be addressed and will be addressed.
Next question.
Does the property the U of M is looking to do on the upper right screen, it's adjacent to the river, but does it have river access?
Yes. Well, the trees, they own all that property. They have an option to purchase 124 acres. The 20 acres did not have access at all to the lake. It was close, but it didn't have access to the Huron River.
Could you elaborate that though, so that you have the opportunity to purchase access? Could you elaborate? Did you just say that they have the opportunity to purchase access additional acreage?
Yes, on the map, the 20 acres was the original 20 acres that was presented to the legislators.
Right.
And that was for 2 office-like buildings, for research and development with 200 jobs at $200,000 a salary for each. It quickly changed. They purchased the additional 124 acres, and the access road that goes between them goes to the South Hydro Park, which is owned by Ypsilanti Township. They do have, the 124 acres includes up to the river and all the trees. That is their property, are going to be their proposed property for the actual 2 data centers with unlimited how many they could put there. there's no limit because they're not regulated.
And I think also the best information we have is they've not yet closed the deal, but they've actually are doing soil borings on the property, and they're going through the phase that leads us to believe it's just a matter of time before their so-called due diligence period expires, and they, from our standpoint, are going to buy that property. They've been authorized to do so by the Board of Regents, and there's nothing that's been told to us to indicate they are not going to buy the property. So there's no question in my mind that's where they're going to continue to look at.
Next question.
U of M is hosting an open house on January 29th to share updates and gather feedback. Was Ypsi Township leadership invited and/or will be in attendance?
We will be in attendance. We were not invited. It was a media release, and Congresswoman Dingell has been working for 6 months to try to get a community meeting, not in Ann Arbor, which is where the first one was, but in Ypsilanti Township. And we learned today, Congresswoman Dingell actually called me, and U of M did a press release that they're going to have it at the Marriott Hotel. And registration is required. They won't have limited spaces like us because it'll probably seat about 1,000 people. So we have already posted that on our website. So you can go to our website and sign up to attend that meeting as well.
Those are 2 one-hour sessions.
Yes.
Given your position but lack of control, what is your best outcome of these meetings such as tonight?
Mr. Winters laid out the best outcome is for us to get the U of M regents with our governor to say no to Textile and Bridge Road and the banks of the Huron River and move it to the heavy industrial zoned areas of our township. That would be the best result. The amazing result would be if they would just leave.
There's 2 more questions on this card, so I'll ask them one at a time. Can you create, well, what is the governor's position? We'll do that one.
The governor supports hyperscale data centers anywhere in the state of Michigan.
Representative Wilson?
Same, yes, that's accurate. I mean, she signed the law that allowed the data centers to get the tax benefit, so.
If I could just add one comment, though. During the last 7 months, I've spoken with State Representative Wilson, it seems like almost on a weekly basis, and I will say this. He has tried everything within his power to try and broker a meeting with the representatives of the governor's staff in the township and even the MEDC, just to have a sit-down, face-to-face, good faith conversation so they can understand our point of view. And the frustration is that, in part, why we're meeting tonight. It's no coincidence, in my mind, that U of M has announced today they're going to have their meeting. It wasn't because they wanted to do this, because we're now taking our narrative to our residents and telling them what's been going on. But I think that I would never speak for State Representative Wilson. He has tried everything he can to broker and set up a meeting, and we simply cannot get that meeting to occur.
Next question.
Can you create letters to representatives online for residents to sign and send to state reps as well as to U of M regents?
Is that allowed, Mr. Winters?
Yeah,
Is
that's
it-
allowed.
Okay, I just want to make sure I don't do anything to
Legal counsel.
violate any political.
You can write to every state representative in the state of Michigan, and you can write to the U of M Board of Regents, they're elected, expressing your displeasure that they're pursuing a virgin site for a hyperscale data center, and that you, especially, you could even mention that you have a problem with them not skipping over an environmental impact study, and ignoring the wishes of your voters.
Yeah, the question is, can we put it on our website as a form letter?
Yeah, it's not partisan.
All right, as long as we get the go ahead to do that, we can assist with that. So yes.
What are the oversight and governance mechanisms in place to protect the local ecosystems, wildlife, freshwater, etc.?
None.
My guess would be, and I'll have to check, I'll find this out, that Eagle or the DNR would have some authority over this site. It's not as though they can violate all of our environmental laws. They're not exempt from that. So we'll have to do some checking. I think that's another good way to really fight this.
Next.
Could the data center over time be nuclear powered?
Yes.
So many of you know that micro-nuclear or modular nuclear is coming pretty fast. And there's, I believe, a reactor out west somewhere. That's one of the test out facilities. So that's where a lot of this is headed.
And I believe that legislation did get signed into law, didn't it? Yeah. And I think those legislators, along with the governor, pushed that and supported it because they knew these data centers were coming. So they were thinking long-term on not only the energy piece, but also how to power the data centers in another way.
Next question.
Have you met with DTE? If so, what was the outcome?
Mr. Winters?
Well, we attended a Zoom meeting where they tried to persuade elected officials to go out and convince you that their 110 megawatt substation would reduce your electric bills. They did not go over very well. And as I indicated before, that 110 megawatt station by itself would equal the entire consumption that's currently being used in Ypsilanti Township. So they see this as being, in my words, a gold rush opportunity. They see money, consumers as well. And right now, they would probably build as many data centers as they can afford to build out. I am kind of curious as to what's going to happen at the PSC if DTE supposedly was given 30 days to sign an agreement with the PSC that for the expedited treatment they receive for the Saline Township data center, they had to agree to be 100% responsible for all energy costs, whether it's used by the data center or not. They've not yet, to my understanding, signed that letter or agreement. But again, they see this as a gold rush opportunity.
We also had an in-person meeting as well, and they're under non-disclosure, right? And they couldn't give us specifics on University of Michigan and what they're proposing. So it's just not productive if you don't have information. And at this point, we don't have enough information.
I think also during that meeting that I was a part of, I think on Zoom, that's when we found out the location of the substation, because we couldn't even get that information out of University of Michigan. It was DT that told us, yeah, it's going to be right on the corner there, Bridge and Textile. Apparently, they had a previous plan to send it down McKean Road, I believe, somewhere. But when they learned about the scale of the project, they said, oh, we need to have this right on site.
Next question.
What other exemptions does Los Alamos get as part of the DoD, such as environmental impact assessment?
That's a federal question, and we can find out from Congresswoman Dingle and get that information from her and post it. I hope that they have to adhere to the environmental laws, but we don't know. Next question.
Will the residents be compensated for the increased health risks and cancer?
I don't even think the check would be in the mail.
And this has kind of been addressed before, but I fully oppose locating any data center at the textile location. If they are located to ACM, what would be the impacts on residents in terms of utility bills and environmental well-being of our communities? I'm concerned for the residents there. I know that's been addressed already, but I just wanted to since it's a new card.
We already answered that question.
And I know this was just recently discussed, are state reps and senators signing NDAs, and is that illegal? And, I know that was
There's
just recently.
proposed legislation, which we will post on our website so people can reach out to all state reps, all state senators, and ask them to support that legislation. Next question?
Anybody else with green cards?
I have a question that wasn't read. What about the fraudulent U of M MEDC application when they got $100 million? They misrepresented
Mr. Wilson?
I think,
on the application.
I think Rep. DeSena might be able to possibly speak to it because he's on the Appropriations Committee currently.
This is something that our Appropriations Committee is currently struggling with with the MEDC. It's so open-ended, you can't imagine.
So anybody can claim to represent the residents of a township?
We don't even know sometimes which companies they're dealing with, when the money is allotted into their budget, because these are secret deals.
But that's our money, right?
Yes, and do you know also that when we give tax money to private entities, even nonprofits, it's supposed to take a 2/3 vote of the legislature, but they've done a workaround because they set up SOAR in the MEDC and they say that's not the government. I'm like, I beg to differ. They say it's a quasi-governmental agency. It's the state of Michigan and your taxpayer dollars coming around. You're paying for this. That's one of the most offensive things about this. That $100 million is all the state taxpayers of Michigan paying for something you don't want. And it's unbelievable to me. We're trying to get the ability to audit anybody who receives taxpayer funds to know how this money is being spent. We don't even know that. So, and this is not a partisan issue. All of us feel this way, that corporate welfare is a problem, and to be able for the MEDC and SOAR to give out this money, and then these entities come back and threaten to sue you with your own tax dollars.
I have a question about the $100 million. If we know that the money can go out, who do you think are the usual suspects that would get it? And can we get information about those people?
In regards to the $100 million grant, we know exactly who made the application request. It was by the University of Michigan through the Michigan Strategic Fund, which is part of MEDC.
There's no way of tracking who the people are.
They haven't received it yet, but the people that supported that, again, was the Ann Arbor Spark. On the application, they're supposed to have the support, or to what degree is there support by the local unit of government or an EDO, which is an Economic Development Organization. The University of Michigan went directly to the Ann Arbor Spark, which is almost an arm of the university, to get a letter of support to go to the MEDC, bypass the township altogether. We had no knowledge that this had even occurred. And it's so embarrassing because you got people on the University of Michigan who sit on the Ann Arbor Spark board. So the whole thing is just such an incestuous relationship that goes on that we just, I know the MEDC, as I said earlier, has got a number of issues going on. I'm sure the state reps can talk all day about that because it's coming to light more and more about some of the financial misuse and abuse that have gone on within the MEDC.
I don't want to grandstand here tonight, but I have introduced a bill to eliminate the MEDC. Just eliminate them. And we, as a state legislature, could deal with economic development if somebody wanted to come to us. If it was a good deal and it helped employ people and it was the right site, we could award it. But since we've given the job to the MEDC, they do things like this that we as legislators would never approve of. But they get away with it because look how difficult of a time, we don't have the proper oversight and control of MEDC. So I say we just eliminate them and start over as a state with our economic development so that we don't have these secret deals and we don't have money being given away that then works against our residents. It's common sense.
May I just ask a question? So did the legislators have to vote on that 100 million or no?
Yeah, just the Appropriations Committee voted on it, not the entire legislature.
So to repeal it, is it just the Appropriations Committee or is it,
That's why the bills was referred to the Appropriations Committee.
so only the Appropriations Committee members, which you are a member of, correct?
So in our law, the Appropriations Committee of the Senate or the House can claw back grants, work projects. And it's in litigation right now, and it's a little deep to explain, but the Attorney General has made an opinion that we don't have that authority, but it's obvious that's wrong because we would never have the ability after we've passed an appropriation to ever know where it's going or have any oversight whatsoever. So it's in a lawsuit right now. It's in court. We've got a court hearing this Friday, and a judge of the Court of Appeals is going to rule whether we have the ability to claw back money once we've awarded it. If we have that, then the challenge becomes how many of the people that voted for these data center tax breaks don't want to claw back money for a hyperscale data center. That's the political aspect of it. But certainly that's the issue that the residents, and this is happening all across the state of Michigan. This is not just happening to you. So there are a lot of people alarmed in Michigan over this issue with these hyperscale data centers. It's a very big issue. You're reading about it, I'm sure, constantly. So the legislature is very aware of the discontent over these coming into their farms, into their residential areas. I think there's a better way. I think Jimmy would agree. There's a better way to do this. Certainly not on the scale that we're doing it. And certainly, I think myself personally, brownfield redevelopments in industrial sites away from residential areas, if we're going to have these, that's the only one that I could support. And I don't even know if I wouldn't give them tax breaks to do that. The tax breaks have obviously allowed them to do this. So if we didn't give them the tax breaks, and why, and these are, Meta, Google, well, this one happens to be, a university, but there's money backing that up. And these are billionaires. And they can afford to build these. They don't need a tax break. They don't need a sales tax break or a use tax break. So that was our first mistake as a legislature, was to give that tax break. And now to allow them to avoid environmental impact studies, the local community input, that to me is just wrong. And for us to have an agency of our government, of our state government, I know Jimmy and I are probably on the same page on this, we won't forget that they do things like this. When it comes time for them to ask for more money, look at what you did. Look at what you did to our people. We're not going to support you anymore. We're not going to give you money. And I think that there's an undercurrent of, there's a political undercurrent right now that's very strong. You just have to make sure your voice is heard. So that's where your voice can be heard, is to tell your legislators, we don't like how we're being treated. We don't like that they're bringing these in without any input from us. And what are you going to do about it?
All right, next.
Out of curiosity, you made it sound like Governor Whitmer facilitated some of this. She's not up for re-election. Jocelyn Benson, I believe, is going to run. Should she get elected, is there any way you have influence? I mean, do you know where she stands on this? And do you have, can you?
Very supportive. Her husband is behind all of this.
Oh, boy.
He's the VP of Oracle.
Okay, didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't.
State Representative, did you have any response to that?
Well, as Mr. Winter said, this is very incestuous. There are, if it wasn't so hurtful, it would be funny. there are a lot of very large corporations behind this. And unfortunately, I want DTE and Consumers Power to succeed. I want to have electricity. I want them to be able to generate power and sell it. But I don't want them to do this to people. They're ratepayers. You guys matter first. You guys get power first. These data centers get power second, right? I mean, if I get it, if General Motors needs power and 2,000, 3,000 of our residents work there, they're pretty darn important. It's like I said at the beginning, the cost-benefit analysis on this is so out of whack. This is not going to employ that many people. So that's the way you have to attack it. And I would just say, you know, we as politicians are not very high on the trust scale right now. So, and it goes across the board. I'm not going to sit up here and cast aspersions on one person or another. The legislature voted for this. The governor signed it, both houses. And we were watching it, and I'm sure Jimmy was watching it just as much as I was. I'm like, oh, they can't get this passed. They brought it up several times, couldn't get enough votes. All of a sudden, people got visited, and people who got a lot of money from DTE Energy and Consumers Power, and then it passed by a small margin. So I think that, but I don't even think the people that passed these tax breaks really realized how impactful this was going to be on our townships, how much land it was going to take out of a township, and how much of a environmental impact it was going to have on our townships. I don't think they really did their research to know, and I don't think any of them thought we were going to get 50 plus of these in the state of Michigan. To store data? No, not to store data. To have AI, and at some point we're going to have to confront this as to what are the ethical concerns of artificial intelligence, and how far do we want to go before we take everybody's job away.
I think to answer your question also is the governor, since she's been our governor, she's been pretty much a big fan of corporate welfare. And so it really should be no surprise that she's supported this and other large-scale projects that take a lot of tax dollars.
Thank you for having this meeting. My name is Diane Sesniak. I'm a township resident. And when I was younger, I was a contractor at the Cook Nuclear Plant over on the other side of the state. And we used to be able to drive right up front and park, and we would joke about which guard had the bullet that day. But once they realized that it was actually a target, now you had to park maybe a mile away and they would bus you in. And one of my concerns I have many concerns, but one of them concerning environmental impact is I could see us losing access to our parks if there's only one road. I believe that it wouldn't take very long for that road to be privatized and guarded, and preventing the residents from using the parks that we pay for. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent. Any other comment? There's one lady here.
Okay.
Thank you. The University of Michigan, it's known to avoid risk, and it avoids shouldering responsibility. If it was a company, we could boycott it. That's what a lot of people have been doing. It's not. It's a university. Is there any way that we as the local people can make U of M reckon with the consequences of their own decision? How can we make them shoulder the responsibility themselves?
I think you need to contact the Board of Regents. They're elected. They are your elected representatives for the University of Michigan, and express your displeasure that they're doing this to your community. And I mean, I hate to make everything you have to contact people, but you have to express to them that the people don't want this. Why are we forcing this in a township that doesn't want it?
The University Board of Regents is up for re-election, I believe, this year, and you have to be a registered member of the Michigan Democratic Party to vote for that. So you should, if you're part of the Michigan Democratic Party, you should register to vote in that election for the regents.
Thank you. Next.
There is one more here
I'll just
that
make a
did
quick,
get skipped.
just one quick correction there. I think you could be registered of either of the parties, because both parties will have candidates for border regions. So.
It's a good point, but it is important to know their position when what's your position on this data center? Because whoever gets through, you would hope that both sides would be opposed to doing something like this. I know that that's the case. We have people on both sides of our aisle that are very alarmed about what's going on with these data centers, and we are trying to figure out a way. If we could pass a law and get enough popular support to limit data centers in the state of Michigan, or limit the amount of power they could draw from our electrical grid, or limit the amount of water in total, because we really don't know right now how much total water is going to be drawn out of the aquifers and out of the rivers and lakes for these data centers. And one of the reasons that Michigan is getting hit hard, well, the big reason is the tax breaks, right? But another reason is we have a lot of water. And I'll give you another reason. They have to stay cool. They have to keep the heat level down in these buildings. And if you've probably read the articles, that they don't work real well in warm areas. It takes a lot more energy to cool the buildings, and a lot more cooling capacity. And guess what? The Southwest and the West doesn't have much water. So here they're coming. We're the target. Michigan's the target for this.
I had the pleasure of working in Nashville against developers who were gobbling up the city. And what we did was we formed a county-wide organization called NOAA. And by organizing people within their communities, within their churches, their schools, any of their organizations that they interact with, we were able to mobilize between 5 and 10,000 people on a given day to come to meetings. And it took a lot of work on the part of ordinary citizens to do that, and trusting that you go in the neighborhoods. But it was also, we had a lot of support from our elected officials who were on our side. And they helped us by giving us and counseling us in ways on how do we talk to people about this thing, how are we going to mobilize around an issue, what are people's concerns about this, and there are other concerns as well. And so I'm wondering if we had the capacity in the township to create an organization with the support of the council that will actually take on U of M and Los Alamos. It works, I've seen it done, and I didn't know if this was the place or what your experiences were in terms of organizing on a mass scale in terms of concern.
Well, the good news is you have your township on your side. That's huge. They're frustrated over the fact that they have very little control over this. I would just reiterate, if you live close to this property, get your camera out and get a picture of some eagles over it, in it, eating a fish on the property. Anything you can get, video, photographs, and go to Eagle and the DNR and say there are bald eagles on this property, because they're going to chew up. I'm pretty sure they're going to chew up all those trees you see right there. And I'm pretty sure that that environment, we just talked about this at the Mason Data Center information meeting, and these entities they're skipping the environmental impact study. They're breaking the law. The environmental impact study has to be performed by law. And the courts or the state are allowing them to skip the environmental impact study. Now they're doing soil borings to see if it can support buildings, but they need to do an environmental impact study, and you need to demand that and form a group. I would agree with you, form a group and start making demands of these people and see how they react.
I live 2 miles away from the proposed location, and I can confirm I have seen the bald eagle multiple times. I've lived there for 4 years, and I used to have photos on my phone of it. And you were talking about the water usage. It's a study, they're using 3 to 7 million gallons of water per day.
This one probably won't use that much, but I'm with you on the amount of water that they're using, and that water also has to be, it has to have effluent too. They have to let it go somewhere.
Yep. And then for noise, their research is 96 decibels, dBA, which is above a 85 decibel, which is considered harmful to hearing.
The Frenchtown location, the minimum they were talking was 75 decibels. That would be the minimum coming out of the data center, and it's pretty well continuous. It's like a hum. And if you look at some of the research and some of the articles out there, like the Michigan City, Indiana, I think the people who live near it said it's a hum that comes out of the site 24/7. And then you'll have some light pollution too, because it'll be lit. So I would think, bald eagles are whatever bald eagles are living around the river or here, they're gonna leave. They're not gonna live there. Now, I know with the environmental impact, sometimes they're looking for a nest. That's part of it. But you may just, like I said, see if you can get video and photographs.
And the humming noise you guys talk about, if you've ever been around a farm, I grew up on a farm, a lot of them have grain dryers, and the hum from grain dryers, that's probably twice as loud as that, maybe more. And I tell you, when you live around it, you kind of get used to it, so you kind of ignore it. But if you've never been around it, it is annoying.
Let me say this too, when they get sited and they get built, if they're exceeding the decibel level of your township ordinance, there would be a fine, right? But the problem is once they're in existence, they'll pay the fines. And once they're there, so you have to raise the question about the noise, and they'll tell you, oh, it's only going to be 65 or 70 decibels. But the noise is a big concern for me when you're talking about residences and wildlife.
Hey everyone, I'm Alicia, I'm the county sheriff. I just want to pinpoint on that. Noise complaints will come in, and then we'll have to send people to answer those 911 calls for service. So that's an added burden for us. They have not reached out to the sheriff's office to even talk about this or security planning, so I'm not sure what their plans are. So I just want to say, as the county sheriff, I have the township's back, and if you all need anything from me, I'm happy to assist.
Thank you, Sheriff.
There's a question we did miss in our index cards. We talk about data centers and supercomputers, which is suggested in township, or will both be cited in Ypsilanti Township?
What was it?
Supercomputers?
Supercomputer?
I guess they're different?
Yeah, that's what U of M has been saying.
U of M, yeah.
It's different.
It's a data center. They're calling it a computation center, right? Is that, yeah. And it actually runs 24 hours. It doesn't store data. It's actually running 24 hours. It's the same. They just don't want us to call it a data center. They want us to call it a computation center. And maybe they can ask that, maybe if they ever have a public meeting where you can ask those kind of questions, we'll get those answers. Yeah.
Just a quick clarification. Did someone say the American
Center for
Mobility, Yucca will be able to take that water and take the glycol out of it? Or is it going to be a better environmental situation?
I think what I said is that in regards to if the data centers are located on the ACM property or the former GM property, the wastewater discharge would be treated nearby in the same pump station that used to treat the wastewater from the hydrometric plant. Yucca has gone on record and has advised U of M that reclaimed water or the effluent could then be utilized to act as to cool the computers, which also was a requirement of the state law that if you get a tax break, a data center, you're supposed to use reclaimed water if it's available. It is available on the ACM property. It would be, in theory, available on the corner bridge and Textile Road, but it would not. But it would be cost prohibitive to transport the reclaimed water that distance. which is yet another environmental reason as to why it should locate on the ACM property. Another reason why MEDC, who sits on the ACM board, should have had enough foresight when they gave $100 million to force U of M to use reclaimed water and to locate on the very property that they sit as a board member on. But again, there's nobody looking out for our interests here in terms of, except for, we have two up here tonight who definitely are. I'm just trying to at least point out that Yucca has got on record saying that reclaimed water is available, and it would be an environmental benefit if they did that.
I really would just like to say, I don't think anyone knew what a data center was. You know, in the past, a data center was a small area that housed computers. Like an IT room, if you will, is the way we used to look at it. And our zoning had data centers allowed in many more places, including the site where U of M is, and we changed it to only be in the industrial, heavy industrial zones, because Trustee Thornton and I and our planner went to Ohio and actually visited these data centers. And they are huge energy users, water users, sewer users, and there's no way the electrical lines, the power tells you exactly this is a heavy industrial use. It's not a farm use, it's not an agricultural use, it's not a residential use. It is a heavy industrial use, and going into brownfield sites that were previously automotive, the infrastructure is there. They might have to improve it a little. They will have to add a substation wherever they go. But it makes zero sense with the loss of all our manufacturing plants and the trying to redevelop them. In this case, we don't get taxpayers' money in Ypsilanti Township, but the other communities would at least have the benefit of taxpayers' funds in a former automotive facility. And it makes too much sense to not make sense. So I just wanted to make that point.
We have a question here.
Is there an enforcement mechanism to ensure that these environmental impact studies are done for data centers in general or other developments?
It's in the law. It's in the law. Supposedly, you're not supposed to have a permit, you're not supposed to be able to get a permit to build until you've done the environmental impact study, and then Eagle would weigh in and say, you've got endangered species on your property, and it isn't always the be-all, end-all that stops development, but it might impact what kind of development you would have. Obviously, homes don't do a lot of damage to eagle habitat, or even sometimes river habitat, as long as you've got proper setbacks. But this is a pretty environmentally sensitive spot, I would say.
You hit on the point with the last statement that you made. I've been looking at those two pictures for the last 2 hours, and they're wildly different pictures. I mean, other than the white dots that you see on the right-hand picture, which if you stood on top of those, you could actually see that American Center for Mobility. I mean, they're that close, probably as the crow flies, what, a mile? Now, I think when we try to cut their money, I don't think we're ever going to do that. I mean, you just said we're talking about a $100 million grant that they're given, but you just said the University of Michigan has a $27 billion endowment. So I don't think cutting their money is really going to make that big an issue. But when you look at those two pictures and you see the one side, it's all green. The other side's all concrete. To me, I mean, I don't know if we can stop it as just the people in this room or the township or our township officials or even our state officials. But when you start turning out and you start looking at all the tree huggers, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to say that. That just slipped out. But the environmentalists around the country that would look at those two pictures and go, I don't care if it was a data center or if it was a Walmart. I don't care if you were in San Diego, California, you'd be going, not on the right side. Now, that's got to get out. I mean, I don't see any media here, and eventually if push comes to shove, but a lot of times, by the time the media gets involved in it, it's too late. By the time we heard about the Saline Data Center and all the problems that they were having, it seemed like they were already pushing dirt around. So, I mean, we have got to sit there and go, okay, we've got to get my man down here in the front row. Hey, I think he's probably the most important guy in this room as far as letting the word out going, hey, do we want something? And we're not even arguing the point. I mean, I think most of us would not want it on either spot. But if we've got to pick a spot, I think anybody in the country would look at those two pictures and go, not on the right side.
Agreed.
Just to kind of follow that, I was looking at the website right now, and I was just going to ask, are there any plans to include just kind of like chronologically what we have done and what we plan to do? So for instance, the letter, sorry, I can't remember your name, attorney drafted. What are your plans for submitting that and when? And then, is that something that we should watch in the U of M Regento meeting minutes and then participate in the Regento meeting minutes? So just kind of like a coordination effort to just make sure that we are kept up to date in terms of what's happening. And then for the Eagle pictures, like where should we send them, so that things are organized?
You can send them to either of our state representative offices, and we will get them to Eagle, and or you could send them directly to Eagle.
What's Eagle?
Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy.
Right. Well, back to the Eagle thing. A couple of us have been sitting here, and some of you might know this. There's a website called ebird.org. ebird.org. I'm looking at it right now, and it talks about North Hydro Park and having this month of this year, having mallards, eagles, rock pigeons, gulls, American herring, great blue heron, and it's all on this website. So I'm giving to you the ebird.org. You can find it. You can search North Hydro Park. And this is not my field. My field is actually healthcare IT. But this is North Hydro Park. And so I think it has the names of the people who took the photos, the dates they took them. Yesterday someone took a photo of a bald eagle. Yeah, yesterday. So I would suggest whoever's on that site, the legislators, the two of y'all, go to ebird.org, search North Hydro Park, and you'll get dates and names and species. And there you have it.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate too, we as state legislators, I love eagles, I love our wildlife, but we're also concerned about people. And I don't know why people living close to this park aren't taken into consideration. And so let's attack it on all fronts here, that this is too close to where people are living. It's just too close. It really, I mean, I'm with you. I don't want these. I want to bring them right down to a very bare minimum that we need, and I'm not sure that we need them anyway. But to put them this close to a park, I'm assuming if you're going to use a park, there's going to be families and children there. And this close to residences, it makes no sense. I wish we could do a resolution as a state that would say that a hyperscale data center couldn't be built within 1,000 feet of residences, or couldn't be built within, I mean, I think 1,000 feet is a good general rule, but I'd go further, to be honest with you. But this is not 1,000. From what I'm seeing here, it looks like you've got hot residences right across the street. Yeah.
Yeah, Rossendale was out there, isn't it? Rossendale Elementary School is not far from there.
Well, right across the Shore Bridge.
It's a high-rise apartment.
Yeah, there's a commercial district, there's a commercial gas station, and they have food in it, and then next to it is a high-rise apartment complex. And it's the distance from across the road from the proposed facility.
Right behind is the largest multiple complex in Ipsy Township, Lakeshore.
Lakeshore.
And then next to that, right behind it, right behind the water towers kinda, and we've got lots of grant money to develop this huge park on the other side of the river, and that hosts all the condos, that really nice residential area that's there, and there's great trash that goes to Rawsonville Elementary. Can I ask a question, because I need clarification on, is there a lot of support? 'Cause I know, especially as an elected official for a long time, you make decisions and you make mistakes, and there has unintended consequences. It's just part of everything you do, but being accountable and understanding that, and I hear what you guys are saying, Jimmy, and yourself, is there support to repeal that? Because can't in my wildest dream imagine that people that voted for that actually don't see that they made a mistake now, because ours is smaller, but it's still expensive. But you're talking about billions of dollars, a 6% tax break, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars they're saving by the state that I don't get no tax break on my taxes at my house, and so it's just like, is there support? Do you see that as realistic happening, and I know we can keep writing and getting hold of people on that. I think that's really important for the whole state. Probably much more important than our issue, because ours are paying taxes anyway, basically.
I've heard of a little bit of buyer's remorse from some legislators. And there's some legislators that's being kind of hush-hush right now. They're not talking about it very much. I don't know what you've been hearing. I know you're the sponsor of the repeal bills.
Well, as you know, I have a lot of colleagues on my side that live in rural areas, and this hit full bore, and man alive, every rural township in Michigan is being approached for a hyperscale data center and solar panels. So, and they're hearing from their residents about, having this amount of acreage. I mean, the Saline Township one is the one that really got it all started. There was so much opposition, and I feel so bad for the people that live out west of Saline that are gonna have to deal with it. And I think that we as legislators, we're sensitive to what our people want. If we're good at what we do, we like, hey, these are not, 80% of my people don't want these. Or we want to try to steer them to places that don't impact people. And so I think that to your question, it remains to be seen. I think that every day that people make their voice heard about not wanting these helps. I go out, I'm on the floor and say, hey, these data centers, nobody wants them. And the people who voted for it, they're like, yeah, I'm hearing it too. And I'm like, why'd you do it? That's all I can say.
May I ask a question? There was a law passed 2 years ago that took local control away from renewable energies, and solar panels was one. They can go to the township board and talk, and I always say township because we have the land, and then if they can try to work a deal with the township, if not, then it goes to the, so can you talk about that? And maybe that needs to be repealed.
I think that legislation, it was specific to wind farms that are over 100 megawatts, I believe, and then solar farms that were over 1,000 megawatts for wind, 500 megawatts for solar. If it's under those numbers, they do have to go to the township board or local municipality and adhere to local zoning. If it's over those numbers, they have to go to the local municipality and work on something, but after about an 8-month, 9-month period, if nothing's been worked out, they can take it to the state and ask for approval.
So that needs to be repealed too.
There is legislation that has been introduced to repeal that as well. I would say one thing I think Trustee Rowe was hinting at is that there's also another political pressure from the building trades in regards to these data centers that I didn't realize was there until I introduced my bill to repeal this $100 million. And then they started reaching out and they said, you're trying to take our jobs. We need these. And so you'll actually see that some legislators are starting to be slightly influenced there as well, where some of our building trades are kind of trying to make threats to legislators to pull back on their opposition against data centers. So
Let me say, my son is a union pipe fitter, and he told me the other day, he says, Dad, these data centers, they're going to be really good for the pipe fitters because it's all construction and putting together. And I said, yeah, but Joe, your brothers, your sisters, all your relatives it's all job related. Your job goes up, their job goes down. So it's in the grand scheme of things, yeah, the construction trades really love the fact that we're going to be building all these buildings. Who wouldn't, right? They're going to be busy. He's going to be busy for a while if this happens. But keep it in its proper perspective. I would just tell you, do as much research as you can regarding AI and what is going on in these buildings. It's not data storage. We are already storing data. All of your data is stored. We don't need 50 new hyperscale data centers because everybody is going to be saving more photos. That's not what this is.
Yeah.
Don't buy into the propaganda. This is much bigger than data storage. This is AI, and we have to really have a good debate in our state as to how far we want to go. Again, don't buy into this arms race with China. It's not an arms race with China. These buildings are above ground. They're big targets. They're not safe. They're not secure from, and many of you can read up about if we had a bad solar flare or an EMP, these all go down. You can't pump gas. You can't drive your car. God forbid that it would ever happen, but the more we expose I'll say this, the more we expose our grid that's already vulnerable, we just haven't had the debate, a really good debate about this as to whether this is a smart thing to do when our grid is so vulnerable. If we had a great grid with lots of plants, lots of energy production, I would feel maybe a little bit different about industrial development, but I just think we have to be really careful about industrial development that doesn't provide a lot of jobs. That's what I keep coming back to. If somebody were coming here and saying this is going to employ 3,000 people, it would be very difficult to argue against it because of people's need to make a living and to live. These don't employ people. It's a lose-lose for your township.
This was the same issue that building trades, and I'm a pro-union. I was raised in a union. My family's, everything I have, basically, it comes from those good wages that came from being a member of the UAW and a child of folks who worked for the, in UAW shops. But we've had the same fight when they built Walmart. Well, look what happened with that. It was the same thing. I think the issue you raised, John, is like, because we know this is temporary, and the issue, you build it now. It's like what Doug started out, our attorney, in the beginning, about greed. And that is like, how much do you need and how far? And right now, frankly, building trades are busy, but it's another issue. But you can't, we can't be a short vision and a short term. We need, which is your issue about the grid and stuff. It needs to be looked at as a bigger issue. And I think it's really important. What did you call that on the cleanup afterwards? You had a term for that. Remediation.
End of life.
And the end of life, that was that. And that needs to be in view of it. If whoever's coming and building these, that needs to be a contract in circuit court that's signed and sealed and delivered. So we're not having to use state money like we did at GM to clean up the facility and stuff. Or now we're dealing with all the big boxes like Walmart and all these. They just walk away and leave you with a village. Look how many millions of dollars been spent there. That's what you're looking at long term without the protections and being more focused on what's the good for the quality, for the people, for the environment, and all those kinds of things. I know too, which we need to put this if we haven't, and talk, kind of we're thinking here too, still, we're all evolving. And what the one resident said about coming together as a group, I think that's really important and getting more organized. We need that, and I think your township board is going to be a part of that. But I think there's so many different things and we're just jumping. Like FERC is one, the Federal Energy Regulation Commission. Literally, the dam is right there. It's right on the property. And now, tonight, hearing these things about the vibrations, and I thought, oh my gosh, FERC is like so, we have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to do these licensing to get re-regulated, you know, and approved. And one of the things they look at is all the animals and who's gonna get killed, and the fish and the birds, and they look for Native American, you know, archives. And so maybe we need to, one of the things that we need to put in our head is look at FERC and try to get FERC on board about, this is crazy that you have a 1940s built dam that we spent millions of taxpayers' dollars, and it's a renewable energy source that works. We're selling energy. It kind of pays for itself these days, and then some. And then we're putting something in that might jeopardize that foundation, and that makes no sense, you know. I mean, nothing makes. But anyways, we need to put that follow up with FERC about that and all those testings and studies that they require.
All right, I just want to bring this to a close and thank everyone and thank our state reps and our township attorney for the presentations that we had today. But most of all, I thank the residents who came out in this weather. And we will post everything on our website. It'll be uploaded to YouTube. We have the video here and audio. We will take the suggestions and put links to different state reps or organizations that representatives send to us. We can post there and try to get as much information on our website in a centralized area so residents and others can have access to it. So let's do this. Thank you.
Thank you.